How much of a historian are you when it comes to the arts? Because looking at your playlist, you've gone very deep, and I love it. I went start to finish this morning all the way through and listened to every single note. And it's beautifully put together, but it's deep.
I'm a big digger. That's what I tell people when I go in the antique stores. I dig around, you know.
Yeah. Have you always been that curious about things like that? Even as a kid, were you the one that kind of lingered?
Oh, yeah. Big reader. Like when I was a kid, I was into baseball. I knew every statistic. I knew every player. I knew every trade. And it's just, some people say it's OCD, but, you know, whatever. I guess it's all the same.
I'm going to get to the core of the music and what's inspired the music on an emotional level, but is there a part of you that it cerebrally thinks that way too? Like, I can't stay there. I've been there. I have to go here.
I've tried to stay, you know, it's just not in me. It's somewhat born on the fact that when my father, you know, when I was young and my father was a musician, you know, he talked a lot about his frustrations with being a gigging musician and how he didn't get to play the music that he wanted to play and how he hated playing music that people wanted to hear, but he was uncomfortable with it, but he felt like he had to give them what they wanted. That was like implanted in my brain at a very young age. That also met my sort of natural tendency to just want to explore. Like I said, I'm a digger. So kind of once I've exhausted something, Bowie is obviously a model for that for me. So was Led Zeppelin. So were the Beatles, Sabbath even, you know, like go totally into your trip and just kind of move on. I mean, great filmmakers do that. Great classical composers do that. I think the good news is that we're now in, or we've entered into the musical world that I dreamed of, which is that you hear pop artists like Halsey doing almost like alternative tracks. You see Gaga doing a country album. I mean, artists really should explore the space.
It would suggest that these two songs were conceived in the last 5 to 6 months. Are these two songs written and recorded within the 2020 framework?
No, actually, these songs were done probably over 6 months ago, before all this hit. But you know, I'm hyper political is not the word. I'm hyper aware of what's happening in the world. I pay a lot of attention, and I think you can surf those waves and can anticipate where things are going long before they got there. And certainly, you know, in terms of the American geopolitical sphere, you know, there's been this building tension that goes way back. People like to point to the last 4 years or whatever, but this is deep. I mean, I remember talking about it with the Melody Maker in '92. You know, this tension between the two halves of America, or the flyover country, or something like that. So this has been a long building narrative, and we have a tremendous opportunity now to come together and sort of build, you know, the perfect world, the perfect music world, the perfect artistic world, the perfect world for everybody to achieve their dream. Or we can carry on and you know, repeat those history books that I've read too, where it ends up with like weird stuff happening.
I wonder the toll that takes on a hypersensitive, so I'm just going to make that assumption based on the music that you make, a hypersensitive individual who has...
The cat claws there.
I know, but you trust me. You know,
I do.
Who you know came out of your own, like I said, micro situation, challenging situations. We all go through it. I'm a kid of divorce, all that sort of stuff. But you know, it affects everybody in different ways. And I wonder how you translate what goes on outside your window and what you see, because I don't know, man. You just feel like a very sensitive artist, someone who's very aware, as you said, and there's a lot to be aware of.
When I was a child, I remember looking out the window, and to me, the whole world was unsafe because the environment I was in was completely unsafe. So I thought the world was unsafe. Behind every tree was a bad thing, and stuff even happened in our family. I don't need to go into that, but they were like that sort of emphasized that the world was dangerous, and my father was incarcerated, and all these sorts of things. So and you know, so I had a worldview which is the world was unsafe. Okay, well then I was lucky enough to go out in the world, you know, hew my own ground, build my own life. And grew up in a time that, on reflection, let's call it the Bill Clinton-ish years, was a very, very safe time in this country. And so Generation X was allowed to be overly indulgent in our emotional thing. And we were able to express a lot of things that would have normally been repressed because we lived in a safe world where we could talk about those things. And so I'm happy that we were part of this sort of opening up. But then we get kind of, lazy is not the right word, but we get comfortable, like, okay, this is the new normal, this is the new normal. And what we've seen, particularly from certain communities, is no, this is not the new normal. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to come out. And so I've had to really step back and appreciate that even though I live a life that on the surface seems comfortable, many other people don't, that they're looking out the window and they're seeing the world as a far more dangerous place to their perspective. To answer your question faithfully, I'm constantly uncomfortable. But I would say that's a good discomfort, because if I really want to speak to someone, and I mean everybody, not just, the guy next door, I really want to be in sort of a relation to their experience in mine, but more as humans, you know what I mean? And can you transcend beyond our individual tribal groups?
Pumpkins are back. So happy that you're happy. And I know that's a strange thing to say, because I feel like in the times that you've brought the band back in different incarnations, there have been pockets of happiness, but it hasn't just, there's been moments where it's like, it's just not quite there. And we've spoken a bit about it, but I just feel like it's there.
I would assume it's difficult for some people to appreciate that in my mind, trying to reassemble the band wasn't just about, the obvious part of it, which is fine, but to really sort of put together the machine again that produced that level of music with a great consistency. And that proved to be a much more complicated process than I could have ever imagined. Like, let's talk about the present, you got 3 guys in their 50s. Everybody's got kids. We all have 2 kids each. Jeff's been in the band now for 14 years. There's a lot of road there. And it's not as simple as like, hey, let's just, do that thing because button. It just doesn't work. And the funny thing is, it never worked like that. We moved so fast through those years, I couldn't even tell you what we were thinking half the time. Stuff just happened because it was the right water and the right drugs and the right, I don't know, chicken.
Very little in the way of contemporary on this playlist, which is not a problem at all, because I'm loving the education. But Fantagram showing up is a wonderful, is just a wonderful moment, a wonderful opportunity to dive into this brilliant duo. And what's your tale? What's the tale with Fantagram?
Well, they had that single a few years ago. I think it was called "In Love." I mean, floored me, like on the floor, floored me. I was like, "Who is this band?" And so I think my fanboying had something to do with them asking me to write songs with them. And so I become friendly with them. And I got to co-write a couple songs on their last record. I didn't write this song with them, but I just think it's beautiful. And her voice is just to die for.
The Mamas and the Papas, what a terribly tragic tale full of wonderfully joyous music.
I love it because he's an ace songwriter. And for that short, incandescent period of time, he wrote some of the greatest songs ever written, including the one song that they didn't record, which was the If You're Going to San Francisco, Flowers in Your Hair by Scott McKenzie, which he produced and wrote. That was another hit song that he wrote. But again, also they came, he actually 3 of them, Denny, Doherty, Mama Cass, and John Phillips, came out of the folk scene. They were all in folk bands. And the magical moment for them was hearing the Beatles and putting the Beatles together with folk.
Sid Barrett, I would rather open it up to you to try to put into words, the influence that Sid Barrett has had on you as an artist, because I've tried in the past to describe Sid Barrett's contribution to music, even out of the frame of Pink Floyd, and I can't really do it.
To me, Sid Barrett is the untrained child with genius level talent. So he writes in an untamed, unstructured way that is very interesting and compelling because he has a genius. It'd be like putting a mic in front of a 5-year-old and just following their sort of inner thoughts as they sort of walk through a kaleidoscopic, land in their brain, right? He was able to do that as an adult and not fall into the normal rules of blues or resolve. His timings are totally alien half the time, but there's a real savant level talent there, which is why I think in many ways, even though his legend is great because his story is tragic as most rock legends are, he's almost unimitatable, if that's even a word, because you'd have to think like him to play like him, and you just can't.
I got to ask you a few fundamentals, or fans will just be like, yeah, that's great, awesome, I like it, Scott Walker, what about Pumpkins? What's up with this countdown? Is this, I guess it's begun? We're talking about these kind of like releases that come out at certain points?
Basically, so you're looking at a double album, a single psych record to be followed by a double rock album.
And what are these 2 songs in relation to?
This is to volume 2. This is the record that's coming out.
All is alive and well in Chicago, ladies and germs. The Bee Gees. I mean, Yeah. Great disco, timeless classics, unbelievable. Changed the entire landscape. But just what an incredible ability to write these heartbreaking, amazing songs.
This album Trafalgar is interesting because I think the first song in it is "Only Love Can Mend a Broken Heart," which is just such a gorgeous ballad. And I like to put on some albums sometimes. I'm sure you do the same thing. You just kind of want to just get into the deep cuts and see if anything jumps out. And I didn't really know this song. I guess maybe about 6 months ago I had this album on, and this song just floored me. I was like, what is this song? Because, and I'm saying this selfishly now, so I'm qualifying my quote. There are songs that, I don't know if it's the chord change or something, where I'm like, oh, that would be such a good Pumpkin song. You know what I mean? And this song to me is like, so whether we'd ever cover it or I'd steal from it, God bless you, Barry Gibb. But it's something about the changes. I'm like, oh, it's just so perfect, you know?